All right, everyone, it's time for the final push. Of course, there are less than 2 weeks left to go until the U.S. election. A lot of people have already voted early in person or by mail, and the numbers are looking pretty damn good for the GOP. Typically, here's my theory. Some people are saying, well, that's just because more people are voting early or by mail-in, and so there's not going to be as many Republicans voting on Election Day. I don't necessarily believe that. I believe that that number is fairly small. I think it has to do with newly registered voters or people taking that particular ballot to try to stop Kamala Harris, number one, or because they simply like Trump more, number two. And that's because people tend not to change their habits. If you voted in person for the last 5 or 6 election cycles, the likelihood of you actually doing the early vote thing is relatively smaller. I think it's like a 9 to 1, honestly. So I wouldn't worry about that. I know that's the new black-pilled cope from people who don't want Trump to win, I suppose. Liberals and concern trolls mainly. But you should vote like your life depends on it, because it does. Over the next 4 years, we're going to have one of two varieties of ideology influencing executive leadership within the United States. On the one hand, you have basically what you've got now over the last 4 years. Inflationary policies, completely ignoring the U.S. border, mainly due to IDPOL. The metastasizing of wars and rumors of wars in multiple parts of the world. I have no problem in predicting, by the way, that if Kamala is elected, Venezuela will invade Guyana. ECOWAS could very well find itself in a war as well, with the new East Bloc group that's formed there, with Burkina Faso, Mali, and so forth. I think Algeria as well. You could very easily see these things. That's one vision of our future. Bad economy, bad foreign policy, bad domestic policy as it relates to immigration, more of the same. More regulations, and more empty sloganeering from the White House. You've got then a competing vision. We've already seen the effects of that vision because Donald Trump was already the president of the United States. Attempting to close the border, attempting to end sanctuary policies, so there's your immigration policy. The mass deportation may or may not materialize, but certainly the wall has already been, that's been cleared by federal courts. Trump wouldn't have any problem with that, and if he accomplishes nothing else border-related, at the very least it's still a major improvement. So you've got that. You've got a leader who is capable of conducting diplomacy not just in friendly nations. It's easy to talk to friendly nations. Kamala can do it, Biden can do it, he can fall asleep on Macron's lap. People find it funny more than anything else. You're not causing a diplomatic incident. It's talking to China and Russia and certain Venezuela and all of these other states, being able to talk to people who you don't get along with and try to build some sort of rapprochement. That's what's important within diplomacy. Nobody worries that Donald Trump or Kamala Harris or anyone else, they're going to insult the British accidentally by doing their tea wrong, and all of a sudden, trade breaks down and the British embargo the United States. Nobody worries about this. What we do have to worry about, though, are adversarial, hostile, and or competing nations. To various degrees. It depends on whether it's more economic hostility or whether it's more like, hey, we want to bomb you. We need that. We can expect a continuation of the Trump tax plan, which means that 100 million Americans won't suddenly see their taxes rise, which is what Kamala has in mind. When she says, I don't intend to raise taxes I'm going to lower taxes for 100 million Americans. No, you don't. What you intend to is not to pass specific legislation increasing their taxes while letting the Trump tax cuts lap, automatically doing so. Then you have a big fight over child tax credit and things like that, which makes absolutely no sense. It's not really a partisan issue. At this point, it's basically J.D. Vance saying, we'll give you $5,000 up front and every year thereafter, and Kamala saying, well, we'll do $6,000 up front, but then it falls to $2,000 thereafter. You get a lot more with the Vance-Trump ticket, by the way, if you have kids in the form of tax relief. It's a monumental amount. You have 4 or 5 kids. It's going to be quite a savings. You might end up paying no taxes at all about being solidly middle class. I think this would be good for the nation's birth rates. I think that it would be good for the nation's industry, and I think that it would be very, very good overall for American families. I happen to agree with Trump, you may have noticed on this particular issue, Trump and Vance. You would have less regulation. Trump has already pledged to reimpose his original concept, which is that if a new regulation is put on the books, 5 other regulations have to be taken off the books. I think this is good. Over the course of several years, you could highly compact the regulatory state. And we've got the possibility, although it would be an uphill battle, of the abolition of the income tax. Can I please ask any fiscal conservative out there what more you could possibly goddamn want? Can I please ask you, has another mainline candidate in living memory pledged the sort of things, the sort of concepts that Trump is pledging economically? No, not even close. The markets also matter. Now, I realize that Wall Street is not Main Street, of course. That's a common mistake that people make. Oh, the stocks are up. Everyone's getting more wealthy. Well, no, not really. Not based on the structure of stocks as they are in most Western nations. But the markets have already appraised the situation. They are bullish on Trump and they are bearish on Kamala Harris. If you want them to get nervous and start moving their capital around to other countries, vote for Kamala Harris. If you want them to say, okay, well, at least for the next few years, things are probably going to be pretty good. I'm staying in the United States, thus creating jobs, thus creating more wealth, etc., more opportunity for upward advancement for the middle class, then you vote for Donald Trump. It's night and day. Also, you have to look at the VP, the running mates. Which one would you rather be running the country? I'm going to ask myself rhetorically, who do I think is more qualified? J.D. Vance or Tim Walz? Because, of course, there's always the possibility something happens to the president. They could become incapacitated or whatever. They get shot. J.D. Vance seems more palatable. He's kind of a goofy dude sometimes, but Tim Walz is just, he's loopy. He's a nut. And so that it's not exactly the sort of person that I would expect to conduct meaningful diplomacy. Certainly not the sort of person that I would expect to tackle the crime issue, the border, and things like that. So make sure that you vote. You should vote early if you can. Of course, if you're in a place like me where you're 2 blocks from the voting place, even a blizzard's not going to stop me from getting there, so I'm not particularly worried. And also, this is a far blue state. I'm basically voting just to add one more vote to the national popular vote. I don't have any illusions. I don't harbor any illusions that Trump is going to come within 20 points of Kamala Harris in a state like Vermont. But it still adds to the national popular vote, and there's ballot initiatives, and there are other people running down ballot too. You should vote on those as well. Sometimes people only vote for the president. They leave everything else blank. What are you doing with your life? It takes you 5 fucking minutes. Just fill out the whole thing. And more importantly, in the next few days, knock on a door, harvest a ballot, put up a sign, make a post, do whatever you need to do, and on election night, bring that reluctant friend or relative. Hell, maybe you know 2 or 3 of them. Well, and I'm not really a fan of either candidate. Try to spell it out for them in very, very simplistic terms. It's basically, you're going to save money with Trump, you're going to spend more with Kamala. If you don't really like the machinations of government under Republican or Democratic leadership, you should want less of a regulatory state. Only one of the candidates is pledging to shrink it. By the way, how much did you pay on income taxes last year? Because there is at least a plausible chance that Donald Trump is actually serious about trying to abolish that. I think we should, again, abolish property taxes at the state level as well, generally speaking, but I digress because it has nothing to do with federal policy. Again, the states abuse you more than the federal government does, generally speaking. Just saying, in most states. Trump is the clear, better candidate. It is quite clear that he is better. He is not perfect, he's not going to be God Emperor, and he's not going to do a 10 out of 10 job. But if we can get just sane leadership that attempts, at least makes an attempt to improve people's lives, and isn't run by complete insane morons, like with the Kamala Harris administration as it would be, yeah, that's preferable, but massively more preferable than the alternative. So get those reluctant relatives off to the polls. Get that reluctant friend, he's a couch potato. He's like, well, yeah, man, but I'm just going to watch the election. No, you go vote, and then you can sack out on the couch. Yeah, I'll supply you with chips. You know, we'll order Domino's or something like that. That's about all. Peace out.